kind of you. Thank you. That's perfect. So I have a presentation and I prefer to let it fill the whole screen so you can all see the whole piece instead of looking at me all the time whilst I speak to it from the back. So I hope that's okay for everyone. There are some of the slides a bit later on where that I've turned into images that are a bit small, but what we will do, we'll share them somewhere after. I'm just thinking it could be in the ion channels of some kind so that you can all get them because we're not really sending it around to everybody. I don't think we have the possibility for doing that, but we'll find a way to do that. So I'll just share the presentation now. And then it's just me figuring out how to do that as a slideshow. There you are. Okay, can everybody see this?
Yes, we can.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much. So obviously, as we've been talking about now for 2 days, is that the world is aging. Neurodiversity is not going away as we age, as I can certainly personally testament to being autistic and having ADHD, and clearly have had that all my life, and it's not getting any less as I get older. Millions of older adults remain unidentified or misunderstood, and the systems that surround us are rarely, if not at all, designed with our aging in mind or with all the different neurotypes that we have in the world. So neurodiversity goes across lifespan. I'm going to go quickly over this because we've gone over it again. Childhood into education, work, parenthood, midlife, and later life. Neurodiversity is definitely lifelong, and the human species is meant to be that forever. A few stats, just because they always stagger me. 51% of neurodivergent professionals in a major global EY study in 2025 identifies as neurodivergent without formal diagnosis. So that's quite significant. We've had another study in the UK that comes up with a similar number. So that's 50% of the world population potentially. So this is really something we need to make sure that the world understands. Only around 0.4% of autism research since 1980 focused on middle-aged or older adults, which we don't really appreciate because clearly there is research to be done there. And women with ADHD are diagnosed nearly 5 years later than men, and up to 97% of autistic women over 40 remain entirely unidentified. And that was the World Economic Forum who did a study on that. So global perspectives, what we do at ION, we are present in all the 6 different regions of the world. We speak to different people around those regions or across those regions on a constant basis. We have groups sitting locally running the countries and running ION in the different countries. And what we are sort of broadly seeing, this is obviously sort of generalization across regions, so please bear with me. Europe, there's an increasing awareness, but inconsistent systems that fits in with neurodiversity of all ages, especially in the sort of older part of it, but it really is across our life system. In Africa, there's still limited recognition, but often stronger community structures, which can help. And there are stronger family structures as well, which can help. Asia, high educational and social conformity pressures. And we're hearing a lot of that from Middle East, Singapore, and India, where we have people actively giving us input around this, and they definitely see these pressures coming on. Latin America, growing advocacy and visibility, definitely a lot more talked about it, and it's really nice to see how we're getting more and more interaction with Latin America around neurodiversity. And North America, high awareness, but really unequal access and support, and really polarized ways of dealing with neurodiversity between fixing and curing to more what we are looking at, which is changing system and integrating things so that we can actually all live harmoniously together. The lost generations, I see that I'm part of that, and I think anyone above 40 is pretty much part of that, maybe even 35. But millions of us just grew older and never knowing that we felt different and or why we did. So I always knew I felt different to a degree where I thought maybe I have a different father, and I actually did a DNA test to find out. Realized I didn't, and then also it became very apparent that all the neurodivergence that we see in my family comes from my father's side. But I always felt, and most other people I speak to misunderstood, definitely misdiagnosed if people want to give us some kind of diagnosis. I found that for women that was often mental health diagnosis of kind, and for men it could more often sort of lead into neurodivergence diagnosis. Institutionalized, we've had a number of our community members being institutionalized simply for being neurodivergent. We have found ways that helps. Sometimes getting people out faster than they otherwise would, because being in a mental health institution against our will is really not very good for us. But as we get older, that can increasingly happen. I'm going to touch on that later. Excluded personally from very early on, even in my own family. It just is what it is. And then forced to adapt. And if we don't, we are excluded even more. So later life changes, challenges can come in around lifelong burnout accumulation. I think I mentioned something about this yesterday. Adrenal dysregulation is something that would be good for all of you to just Google and have a look up with, because we are constantly under sort of stress and often experience burnout. That constant state of that can lead to adrenal dysregulation, which can lead to us feeling like we're being drugged, when in fact it's our own body that kind of reacts to this state by inducing a drug-like state of mind. But if we feel we're being drugged, we can feel a bit paranoid about what's around us. And some of the people that we had that we've been helping that were put into mental health institution against their will had exactly those kind of symptoms. It can actually be looked at relatively easily, but doctors seem to not recognize it. Loneliness and isolation, financial instability as we get older, especially if we haven't had a job throughout our life and might not have been able to develop pension savings. In countries maybe where there isn't any public pension, that becomes even more significant. Misunderstood healthcare needs, we've heard a lot about that already. Sensory overload. For me, the sensory systems seem to become more sensitive as I get older, and from what I can see from the chat and what I've heard here so far, that seems to be the same. Mental exhaustion from masking and dementia overlap and misdiagnosis. So I'm going to go deeper into some of those things later in this. So just like a global brief overview, these are the kind of things that we'd heard from around the world. It's not, interestingly, specific to one region, but the aging and the care basically is bad everywhere of us, and the understanding that we exist as older people is pretty much nil across the Western world and across the rest of the world as well. But in parts of the outside of the Western world, actually, it is easier to live with that than it is in the Western world in the way we have set up the world around us. So that we could look at institutionalization at a point where our masking fails because we've just done too much of it for too long. Routines might disappear, autonomy is removed because people around us start making decisions for us. Sensory stress will increase, and then we can tolerate less than what we could before. Cognitive overload rises, and the burnout accumulates beyond sustainability. And so I think what we have normally looked at or often looked at as eccentricity, rigidity, maybe anxiety or stubbornness, social withdrawing, or a difficult personality becomes really clinically visible in distress. And also I've heard a lot of people with elderly parents saying that my parent got diagnosed when they went into institutional care as an elderly person. And they had just all their life thought, no, it's fine, it's just a bit of eccentricity. And those elders had now lived through that for their entire life. So it becomes clinically visible as distress. And then it might be that the person have already been in psychiatric care or in a hospital or in a care home and in crisis and potentially heavily medicated. There is some research from America around closed care institutions for elderly people having 40% autistic people there. And often it will be in a state of heavily medication because the carers don't know why we are the way we are. And therefore, that is the easy option, and we don't really have protection, especially if we haven't been diagnosed. Back to the discussion of being diagnosed. If you're elder, you can't self-diagnose if they have decided that your mind doesn't work anymore. So your children or your family around you need to have that piece of paper to say, this is what our parents is, and you need to take that into your care of them. And actually, that is the only way you have some level of rights in the law, because we might not be able to ourselves talk about how we're different as we can before we potentially get dementia or other. So dementia and neurodiversity overlap is pretty poorly understood. Many older neurodivergent may present differently always. I mean, I present differently now. I don't know how I would present if I developed dementia, but I have a feeling that I might be a lot more like I was as a child, which was incredibly inside myself, very distracted, living in my own world pretty much all the time. And whichever way we present it as children, I think those traits could come out much more clearly if we develop dementia. We could have communication distress, definitely, and we show it differently. And we would also mask whatever cognitive decline there is differently. And so people might not fully get what is actually going on. And it could be misinterpreted around our behaviors, as it has been our entire life, right? So care institutions, as you are really heavily built around normative aging assumptions. And we need to obviously advocate to change that, but we need to be aware of it until we get it changed, because currently it's an enormous blind spot globally. This is around the world we're having this problem. So behavioral concerns are often triggered before institutional placement. So research on older adults entering care homes found that behavioral concerns, confusion, mobility, and cognitive issues was part of the major reasons for institutionalization, because it becomes difficult, one, for us to live on our own and for our families to care for us. So those were the major reasons that we have heard around the world is happening. For us as neurodivergent adults, our behaviors will be triggered by different things, such as sensory distress, overwhelm, shutdown. I mean, I saw it in the chat earlier. Someone said, but how terrible to think about having to be in rooms with lots of people around. It would be terrible. I couldn't do that. I need my own time where people are not walking in on me unexpectedly, and where I can be peacefully sitting in my own world. And I can't think of anything worse than being in a place where, eating has to be in groups and everybody has to be together all the time. You have to sit and watch television together, whatever it is that would go on. That would be a lot. And my reactions to that might very easily be misunderstood, sadly. So this is a bit big, and I made it fill the whole screen, so maybe you can see it easier, but I've also made some subsequent slides that makes it, that picks out a few pieces of them. So number one, what changes as we get older? So our brain and cognition, obviously processing speed may slow, working memory may be more effortful, and multitasking becomes harder. I mean, we definitely, I find it difficult to recall the right words. I'm 62 now. I'm thinking, gosh, if I'm already finding it difficult to record words, that's a bit concerning. I do speak two languages and switch between Danish and English on a daily basis, but still, it's just annoys me that definitely it's not being recalled as quickly as it normally would. Energy and stamina, lower energy reserves, absolutely sure. Something I'm already experiencing: faster mental fatigue and longer recovery times. There's no doubt that is definitely something that I'm experiencing already, and I expect to live to 94 at least. So I'm sure that will continue unless I make sure I do something to try to keep it going. Sensory system, increased sensory sensitivity to light, some noise, textures, physical discomfort. I mean, I have it with smelling. It might help me not lose my smelling sense when I get older. I don't know. But it can be quite overwhelming for me if the smell isn't working for me. Emotional regulation, just having less capacity to manage stress. We do really have to look after ourselves a lot better as we get older. Social connections, smaller social circles. Um, I have people around me losing loved ones, as grief and loneliness in bigger numbers, and reduced tolerance for masking in social situations. I think I have zero tolerance for that by now. Actually, people just got to take me as I am, right? Life roles and identity, lots of roles. So work, I'm thinking, what can I do when I'm not working? So I kind of just decided I will always be working because I don't really want to think about not working. It kind of is what my brain wants and needs. So I'm not looking for that not to be there. And then obviously physical health. So the pattern in the middle, you can see this sort of smile place is where I'm sort of theoretically feeling that where we have the childhood where traits often are more visible or intense, adulthood where we sort of mask and compensate, and then later life, I think the traits are going to increase again. So a bit bigger in terms of what may increase again in later life. It could be, again, the same as I was just saying, sensory sensitivity, need for routine and predictability. I think we need to try to look at these different things and honor it, but make sure that we go, yes, that is something I have to take more care of than I used to do, emotionally overwhelmed. Just making sure we don't get too intense in what we're feeling, because it would. I mean, what can we do? But we have to try to uh, avoid the things that will make it too emotionally overwhelming. And there are certain television programs I won't actually engage with, which I probably never did anyway. Certain news, I just don't. I prefer just to stick to news that are neutral about politics and economy, even though that's not always that neutral, but it's not emotional in the same way as if I read about people dying in terrible ways or how people mistreat each other. I've had to negotiate around some of that stuff. Um, my special interest, interest and deep focus, it really is a comfort place for me to be in sort of the long-held interest that I can relax in. And I think it's worthwhile for all of us to look deeply at what makes me calm and happy. So I used to paint a lot. I'm going to go back to painting a lot more because that is definitely a place where I feel much more content. Our communication is not going to be less direct or literal. In fact, when we drop the masking, it will probably be more, and we will have much less tolerance for any of that. We do need the downtime and solitude. I certainly do. Most neurodivergent people I've spoken to around the world do. And and I do also get a bit anxiety in unfamiliar situations. If there is a lot of people I don't know or I have to adapt to, I find that hard. And if there's a demand overload, I definitely feel a faster approach towards burnout. And I then make sure I stop it before that. These are all the things that we can be aware of ourselves and help ourselves um, with ensuring that we make predictable routines for ourselves. We have sensory-friendly environments around us. We are able to choose, what is helping our dignity, our confidence, and our calm. Rest is key. I need more rest than I used to, and that's not going to get less. We just gotta accept that is the case. Respect for communication style, meaningful connection, quality relationships, few quality ones rather than a lot of not so good quality. And I think showing this, for example, to our family will be helpful for the family to understand, and the people around us, how we react to different things and what can change now when we are getting older. Grief, trauma, identity support, space to process life experiences and changes with compassion, especially if we are being diagnosed later, like Una at 70 and me at 50, and many people in this whole space. I think we just got to really honor ourselves and what we're going through, because when you do get diagnosed late, it took me years to look over all my life through a different lens. And that was a lot of mental energy to do that as well. And I think we really have to honor that. I'm writing about a lot of it, and that definitely helps me too. And that's just one way of coping with some of that, some of those changes. So in the last one, the red one, there's some practical actions that can create understanding, safety, and inclusion that again I would recommend sharing freely. And we will share this wider in all social media in Ireland so people can take it away and use it. Having things on one page is sometimes easier. You could even have it on your phone and just share it with people if you feel like. So learn the lifelong neurotype. We need to learn about ourselves and understanding if we get a diagnosis, what does that mean? What is it actually? Look into it, talk to other people. I think that helps a lot to be curious, to get to understand yourself better. And notice various changes early if you can, sort of trust observations that you feel and speak to people about it. Adjust the environment around you and ask like for other people again if we are having some of our loved ones that we're looking after. We have to notice what makes them comfortable or uncomfortable. So adjusting the environment as opposed to expecting the person to adjust. This is going to be a lot harder for us as we get older. Over medicalizing behavior, I really caution about medication for as far as we can. Of course, there's some life-saving medication that's really, really needed. But actually to have the awareness that many of us have heightened medication sensitivity, and the amount of medication that some of us can have or some people can tolerate is too much for us, or maybe in some cases too little. We're not standard, and we're also not standard with how we deal with medication. And then share information across settings, make sure everyone has a full picture, if you're a carer or for yourself, and then include us in any decision. I mean, to that state, I mean, I'm thinking I should write a lot of things down that I want to see happening when I get older. Even when I die, I said to my children, I'm going to write the whole day of how I'm going to be buried and funeral and all of this. And it's like, okay, mom, that's a bit premature, isn't it? I was like, well, it's not for me because I'm a long-term planner, okay? And I don't want something to happen and then I can't, get it in the way that I would like it to be. We have that option to write things down in advance and make sure people are informed of it. And then support dignity, identity, and belonging. These are the kind of things that we expect, but we're not getting it. So we need to put these kind of slides in people's face and say, this is what you should be doing with people like me. Planning ahead, absolutely plan ahead as much as you can, but that's a planner talking, and not everybody are planners like that. But I'm stressed about what I'm going to be doing when I'm 90, which is kind of crazy, but I can't help it. So I plan a lot. So another piece here that I just took out, which is also in the one that has everything in it, potential overlap with neurodivergence and dementia. So it's just guidance, right? It's something that we need to be aware of. There can be similarities. And I think understanding the differences is also pretty important to make sure that we can, and then people caring for us can. And these are the kind of things that should be shared with all old people's homes, everything, right? I think it's very important to understand, first on the left hand, why overlap happens. I mean, some traits present similar to symptoms, which is also the case for neurodivergent traits versus trauma traits. There's like a 70 to 80% overlap. And it can be difficult to know which part of it is trauma responses and which part of it is neurodiversity traits. And it's something that the world is very confused about. And now we get an extra overlay, which is potential dementia in older age, which again has this overlap, and it's difficult to know which piece sits where. Masking and adaptation can completely collapse and probably will. I think I've already collapsed mine, quite frankly. But I know a lot of people my age who's done the same. The co-occurrent conditions that we all have some of. So, I mean, obviously, I both have autism and ADHD, but obviously, a lot of that can come with anxiety as well, can come with depression. That's not something we're born with. It's something that happens to us because of how difficult it is for us to be able to live in a world that's not made for us. Changing life stages, retirement, so many people who are very, very connected to the work they do, and it is a fuller identity can find it extremely difficult to go into retirement. And actually, it's the beginning of the end when they have to do that. So I think for some, it's just better to just keep going one way or the other, or keep being engaged with things that is of interest for us. Bereavement and illness, menopause changes as well, sensory overload, all can increase the difficulties we are finding as we're getting older. And then the overall under recognition, where we're just broadly, completely undiagnosed, and any change that we are showing will be literally overridden by it's just aging or dementia. And I think we've got to keep very open eyes towards that. So the kind of common areas of overlap, memory differences. I mean, with ADHD, I mean, there are times where things just go out of my mind so fast, I haven't even, put it in my mind before it moves on again. And that's a lifelong thing I have had. But, it's also what happens to some people as they get older. It just happens to be that I've been living with that all my life. It can affect various working memory and recall, but the patterns and the reasons for it differs. And I think that's what's confusing, and that's what we need more understanding on. Repetition and routine may look similar in both neurodivergent dementia and dementia, needing sameness and repeating questions or behaviors. The communication, the finding words, literal language, and reduced conversation might also be an overlap of that. I mean, it can be confusing because it can both struggle with expressive language, but progression and context are different, and that's what we need to look for. Executive functioning, I think we all are aware that changes as we get older. Some of us always had some challenges around planning and organizing or task switching, and that might just slide into old age and actually not really change because it's always been that way. But suddenly people see it as a something else, right? Sensory sensitivity, overwhelm, withdrawal, fatigue, same thing, something that most of us have always had. And then in older age, it just gets maybe more, but also it gets seen as something else. And then social interaction, I mean, needing space or seeming withdrawal and anxious, something that we have had our whole life that gets overlapped in with potential dementia. So the key differences to consider when we look at these kind of things is onset and progression, change from the previous ability, what pattern has developed over time? Are the patterns different in terms of how potential dementia symptoms increase, or how neurodivergent patterns are stable and with quite predictable triggers, which is not quite the same case with dementia? And then impact on independence. It can gradually affect dementia, sort of ability to do daily living and keep ourselves safe, where for neurodivergence, the challenges that we are finding is often related to the environment around us as opposed to the ability to actually do it. And so assessment needs, I think we require specialist cognitive assessment that looks at the neurodiversity traits and the dementia. And this is where obviously a diagnosis paper would be very helpful for the people that are doing that assessment, because it will lay out all the different traits and variations that has been found during your diagnosis. And that's why, again, I think we shouldn't underestimate the usefulness of having a diagnosis as we get older, also for the people that are helping us with life. So what does it mean in practice? You take a full life history, including childhood, look for patterns, not just snapshots here and there. That's really important. Listen to the person and those who know them well over time. Consider both neurodivergence and dementia. They can coexist. I mean, it's so logic, right? But I think we have to say it. We have to say it out loud. Avoid assumptions based on age or behavior. Tailor support to the person, not the label. I think there's nothing that's rocket science here, right? Understand the person, see the whole story, and provide the right support. Not rocket science, but I think pieces of like this could maybe we should, laminate it and then share it out or something so that everybody could have it and bring it up once they are surrounded by older people. So 89 to 97% of autistic adults aged 40 plus in the UK may remain undiagnosed. This is a high percentage, and this is why we're having these problems when we then potentially get older and get into, we won't potentially get older, we will get older, but potentially get into the health system that just is not expecting to see older people that are also neurodivergent. So this will obviously have huge implications for care homes. It already has huge implications, but it's not being recognized. So we need it recognized for hospitals, for dementia assessment, for mental health treatment and institutional care. It needs to be recognized that our traits blend in with everything else that goes on, and that doesn't change. That will stay the same. Many people entering later life systems may never have understood themselves, may never have been understood by systems or other people, may have been treated only through behavioral and cognitive lenses, which is wrong. We need a deeper understanding of these natural human differences throughout our life. So human energy matters. For me, obviously, functioning is not the same as sustainable functioning. We need to be able to function sustainably throughout our life, from children through adults, through elders. And that's not what we're looking at right now. But that human energy matters. So what needs to change in our humble opinion? Well, we need systemic change to everything, to healthcare, to workplaces, communities, policy, education, leadership, representation. There's a lot of changes we're needing, and we're all working on it because it's something that we need to be aware of, and we need to push in on this. Many healthcare systems are still assessing aging through neurotypical assumptions. I said that before, I'm saying it again because it's really something we have to put out there. And I know a lot of you are doing it, and we just need to continue to put it out there. Communication differences, sensory environments, executive functioning, anxiety, overwhelm, diagnostic misunderstanding is something that's a reality of our lives all the time. So what are we going to do? We're going to make sure we change the question to how do we make people fit systems, and change it into how do we design systems flexible enough for human diversity. That obviously takes time, but as we were working on it, we keep finding tools where we can show people this is it. In case you don't know, this is it. This is how we represent. This is coming from us. Our lived experience and our voices is what gives us agency to go in and actually push for change. But only when we are together, and many of us are doing it, that's when things change significantly. I talked to someone from the Sunflower Lanyard organization recently, and we said, well, if really 50% of the population was wearing the lanyards in all the different places, what is the turning point where so many of us are wearing it that they understand that systems needs to change because the queue for the lanyard people is being longer than the queue for the non-lanyard people. And so where are we then? And I think that was talked about earlier, where when we get to actually be a significant amount of people and it's recognized that we are, and the lanyard is one way of recognizing that in a very visible way, then it's easier to start pushing for change to systems. So we do have an opportunity of longer life. We have wisdom, just to finish everything on a positive. We have creativity. I'm sorry about my dog in the background. We can contribute to society as long as we live with all kinds of things. We can do mentorships, both reverse mentors, where young people are telling us about their lives and where we are telling them about our experiences. Late self-understanding. It's never too late to understand ourselves better. Personal growth should happen throughout life. We are never knowing it all. If we think that we are wrong, there's never an I know all about it. I don't need to do it. Continue to have self-understanding, and then that intergenerational learning, because the younger generations are very different and have a lot to say, and I think we should listen to them. They're very interesting. So, a more human future. Neurodiversity is not only about difference, it's about rethinking what it means to be human together. All of us together. That's the key place we need to go. Thank you very much. I'll now we have 10 minutes for potential questions. If I can stop sharing this one here, there. So there's something in the Q&A. So Nicole, I don't know if that was from the last one, but my sort of response to How do I deal with a really shiny reflective train and bus station? It has highly reflective glass panels and very harsh architecture, and the staff rush people along. I would definitely need to wear sunglasses for that. That's the simplest first one that came into my mind. And move in the way we move in the time we need. It's hard to be rushed by people when we're in public places. Sadly, it happens. We could put some feedback into the train station that that's not appropriate. And let's look into if we can do a copy of the slides. I think it would be helpful for the elder care settings for sure. So thank you very much, Mel, for that. So, Emil, from your global experience and advocacy work, do you believe society is genuinely progressing in its understanding of neurodivergence, particularly among older adults, or do significant gaps still remain? Thank you, Emil, for that. I have to say, it is progressing, but it's progressing so slowly. And so we are working sort of from the grassroots at the Institute of Neurodiversity. And there's a lot of people, more and more and more people speaking up. And that's what we need. The problem is in the countries where speaking up does not feel safe. I mean, sadly, in my home country, which is Denmark, there are many people that will not speak about being, for example, autistic openly. And you're thinking, really? I mean, how are we having such a social society with the happiest people in the world and you can't talk about being autistic? It just makes no sense. It makes my brain explode, right? So it's just a global phenomenon. I mean, I've just come back from Singapore, speaking to people there, speaking up publicly, openly about being autistic. I was doing a work with a global law firm, and we had a number of the partners, and I started my presentation saying I'm autistic and ADHD, and like their eyes go like huge, and it's like they can't think, they can't look at me and think at that at the same time. But we got to take that risk. This was my day job work I did that in. I think those risks to push it, Emil, because otherwise it doesn't change. We just have to keep saying, no, it's a very broad, neurodivergence is very broad. We come in all different heights with different eye colors, with different IQs and EQs, and everything that you have in the typical group of people. We are all having all of that. It's not just a small specific group that you can recognize somehow for being neurodivergent just by looking at us. It is literally a hidden disability or difference, whatever we want to call it. So I think it's changing, but too slowly. We can all do something, every single one of us. I mean, Alice, you keep saying that you're giving people the papers, the doctors, and this fantastic. We should all be doing that. If you don't understand what this is, here you are, pass it over, right? So thank you. So how important is it that neurodivergent individuals themselves are included in leadership policy discussion and decision-making process? It's absolutely key. If we are not represented, representation matters. If we are not represented, nobody should make any decisions about us. And we got to speak up about that all the time. We must be represented everywhere. And we are pushing very hard for that to happen in all the countries that we're supporting to go in and make that happen in policy everywhere. So thank you for that question. It is extremely important. So from Nikki, Charlotte, I would love to hear more about the idea that it's never too late to have a better self-understanding. My mom is over 80 and has all the traits of autism and ADHD, but would never engage with this due to stigma assumptions of this being a naughty boy's condition. How ethical is it to try to encourage someone to reveal this to themselves when they have spent their life building barriers around it? I have to say, I get it. I hear you. I understand it. We can't do that. It's not ethical. It's not ethical to push on to people that, oh, I like the diagnostics that we're kind of doing all of us all the time, because you meet someone, you go, you're so this, that, and the other. It's so obvious. But when it's not obvious to themselves and they're not ready to embrace it, I personally don't feel that it's ethical to push it onto them. I've heard about some people doing it and falling out badly with key people in their lives because it literally isn't. It's their journey. It's their journey, and I think we have to respect that. What I did do, of course, because I can't help myself with my family, was like, okay, I've been diagnosed autistic, so I think we should all do a self-test. And then I shared the Cambridge autistic quotient with my entire family to fill in. And Of course, yes, there was quite a few that was the scoring above the clinical threshold, but then it was for them to deal with, and none of them has. So they just go, okay, well, yeah, fine, but it hasn't necessarily led to that deeper desire to understand it better. So yeah, I wouldn't push in if your mother is not open for it and it's too much, then I think let her live the rest of her life in happy sort of ignorance with that one, I think. But it is still maybe hopefully there's other ways you can sort of develop. I had my father staying with me quite a lot up until when he died early 70s, but the sort of 10 years before. And we think he was definitely autistic, but his mind wasn't there to sort of do that. But I did sort of say, "Oh, I see that you see these details, or I see you commenting on little things." And in the end, he did read a book about highly sensitive people, which is effectively sliding into autism as well. And I think he found his own interest. I was dropping little things, but I wouldn't put it on people if they're not ready for it, for sure. So, Sandra, adults still find it difficult to share. I am. So I'm sorry. So I'm so surprised, even with all the awareness now around neurodivergent individuals, it still carries a shame. I know it's terrible, and it literally shouldn't be the case. It just does, and it's not just like autism, it's also dyslexia. People just won't talk about it. All kind of different things. Also various medical issues people have. They won't talk about it. There's so much stigma about being open with these things. The only thing I'm hoping that because I'm super open with it, that it will encourage other people or make them feel more empowered with that. But we don't know for sure. So Hugh, one of the significant social assumptions is that older people have children. Some of us do not. Talking about equipping social institutions is okay to up to a point, but we also need to think about how we equip ourselves as best we can to deal with a world harsher than we would wish it to be. I absolutely agree, Hugh. Absolutely. We don't all have children, for sure, and more so, we don't all have children. And what we do need, I feel, is to try to have some people around us, whether it's brothers or sisters or whatever it might or might not be, or close friends that we have adopted as family, to share what our needs are or write it down whilst we can. I mean, I'm just preparing for my worst case scenario, and I think we shouldn't wait for too long doing that. I think we just need to find somewhere where we can hold some of that with people we trust. I think that's very key. So, okay, we're going over to the panel. I can see my panelists are now arriving in. So here we are. Hello. So I just want to try to find a way, sorry, to get to the pieces I need to get to actually be able to run the panel. So on the panel, we've got Mary Doherty that you have already met. We got Ian Burnip. Hello, Ian. Welcome. Great to see you. John Marble. Hello, John. Great to see you. And Nigel Lockett. That's bad, Nigel. Can't even remember how to say your name, and I've known you for how many years, right? That's that's pretty bad. So thank you. So what we're going to have Una. There you are, Una. Welcome back
There.
to fantastic, fantastic. So I was going to sort of put some questions out that we can then talk about together around the lived experience of being older neurodivergent person and how we happen to be in society, how we enjoy ourselves. I don't know if would Ian, John, and Nigel like to make just a brief introduction of yourself, so that people know who you are. If we start with John, then Ian, then Nigel, is that okay?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm John Marble. I apologize. My laptop just crashed, so I'm on my phone. I may switch to my laptop in a second.
No
So
worries.
for the technical difficulties. I live here in San Francisco. I'm autistic, ADHD, dyspraxia, dyscalculia. I work with Pivot and Neurodiversity, training companies on how to support neurodivergent employees. And over the last couple of years have co-authored both the Neurodiversity and Autism for Dummies books for Wiley. I'm not sure if that's what you were looking for, but
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much for that. Thank you. Ian,
Hello, Pat. You all right? I'm a Geordie.
thank you. Excellent. Hello, Ian.
Well, I'm just me. I'm a 69-year-old guy. My wife died 2 years ago. I'm a biker. I created a new image for myself. And shit, I've got no problems with life.
Very good. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ian. Nigel.
Hi, thanks, Charlotte, for inviting me. Well, in my 20s, I was a serial entrepreneur. In my 40s, I became an academic, much to my surprise. And in my mid 50s, I came out as the dyslexic professor. So in my community, I was very public. I did a year in the life. I blogged each week. And now I've left academia and I mentor entrepreneurs, particularly dyslexic entrepreneurs. And I'm sure that may come out in our discussion. But I've learned a lot from coming out myself very publicly in an environment where you don't find a lot of dyslexics publicly, and then using all my skills as an entrepreneur and an academic to mentor, as I say, neurodivergent, particularly dyslexic.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nigel. The first question I'd like us to talk about, and you can put your hand up when you feel ready to speak, and then we'll pop in with that. As you all got older, what have you found? Where have you found strength, creativity, or resilience in yourself? Anyone? Thank you, Ian.
Yeah, I don't know about the other people here, but I had to create a new me. I took very, very ill 25 years ago. I'm bipolar. Not ashamed, I'm quite proud actually, because I'm different. But I don't ever separate. I tell people it doesn't bother us. It's nothing. There's bigger problems in this world than worrying about my life. Just go watch the news every night. But I get a bit upset when people are self-pitied because I'm strong. People should be strong. They've got a life. What's to worry about?
Thank you very much, Ian, for that. And well done with going forward with passion and with force. Anyone else?
Oh,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, John. Yeah. So your question is around how have we sort of coped with our neurodivergence,
But
and
also
what's that
found
mean?
strengths in. Oh, no,
Yeah.
So I want to, because we've had a lot of, obviously, of the bad stuff that we talked about the last couple of days. And I wanted to also hear from some of you, where have you actually found strengths in getting older? And creativity may be something you didn't do before, and a new kind of resilience maybe.
I would say that is rings very true from my own experience, in that what I've learned about myself as I've got older has been really really positive. So I no longer think about dyslexia as a disability. I think of it as an advantage. And when I'm working with younger dyslexic people, particularly business people, it's really important to understand that and help them to understand what they bring to their environment. What I would say is that I've also understood more about the trauma of being dyslexic, right the way from being a young boy going to school and trying to get work. So that's really important.
Yeah.
To talk to people about that.
Absolutely. I think with all of this, and I know you have talked very publicly about it, in fact, calling yourself the dyslexic professor publicly. And I think that's super helpful. I know many people in academia who are dyslexic who said that it's significantly holding them back in that environment. And I generally speak to many dyslexic people who just say, well, school was so busy telling us we were stupid because we couldn't read. And it was just like not helpful for the rest of your life because you carry it, right? And that's it's good to get to know about it or feel more, look back and go, okay, as you get older, but it still happens so much, and we really need to try to get that to not happen because it undermines people so that they find it harder to live the best they can. Yeah. Mario, Una, John, yes, you had a comment there. Please.
Oh, I thought I saw Ian raise his hand. I was just going to say that now I want to go last because already Ian and Nigel have kind of filled in parts of my life that I'm feeling. And I want to see what Una says because I probably will resonate with it as well. I think there's like a comfortableness the longer you understand yourself as neurodivergent and also the older that you get. Like I always look at elderly people who just don't care. Like they're like, part of it is just like I've lived my life, I know my life, I don't care, and have admired that. And I feel like I'm always parsing out, is this because I'm more comfortable with my neurodivergence or because, you know, next year I turn 50 years old? But there's something about just being comfortable with who you are that leads to that sort of strength. And then you realize, you mentioned dyslexia. My mom was dyslexic, and I think Charlotte, you mentioned just being told that you're not smart. She was told that all of her life. Half my family's dyslexic. They were told that all their life. Yeah. When you get to the point that you realize that, no, I have my own strengths, I just wish it would have come a lot earlier in life.
Better late than never, right?
Yeah. But I'm grateful for that it's come now.
I know. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. Una.
Yeah, it just struck me that I suppose I had the opposite problem in that, you know, my dad thought I was absolutely brilliant and a reflection of him in a way. And so there was always that core of, well, you're actually okay, really, just sort of difficult at the edges, you know. So it's been a sort of a foundational strength to refind again and realize what the basis of it was. It was awareness of this neurodivergence and the strengths that actually come with it, because he certainly had them in spades. And I just think the confidence he had kind of transmitted a little bit over optimistically to me, but I know that's also there. And my mother is, you know, very good, neurotypical, good sense, you know, balances it up very well. But it's great to come back to those things one had as a child and say these are really constitutional and they're strengths. They're not weaknesses, they're just differences, that's all. And to know that for sure is a wonderfully reassuring. And it means that can one pick up all kinds of creative things that one may have left aside earlier in the struggle for survival and pick them back up again at ease in retirement and play with them. I loved the animation there today. I loved the input about the music. I thought it was wonderful. I did a lot of art as a child and now I'm kind of, you know, going back to it. But they are a source of joy and creativity, but also foundational strengths. To know that that neurodiversity is actually a strength at the bottom of it all. It's a foundational thing that gives one a security that one may not have had in the intervening years, actually, in a way. And that's terrific. I really enjoy that. You know.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. Ian, you have your hand up.
There's one thing that's kept me strong. It's religion. I'm a God-fearing man. Go to church on a Sunday, and I've had a lot of faith. Now, I was once in a psychiatric ward. I'm not sure myself. You people might have been in, I don't know. But one thing I learned was I once met a gentleman in there, and he had a Monopoly board.
Yeah.
No pieces on it. And he said, come with me, sit down. Me and you at the beginning of the Monopoly board. We've got to go all the way around the board, back to go to get out. That's what you work towards. And that's for anything in life. Yeah. But religion means a great deal to us. Saying prayers every day I do. But my way passed on, you got to understand that. So it's a grieving thing as well. And I've had a lot to cope with. But I cry every day for me losing my wife, obviously. But also, I've got to be me to create dreams for when I meet my wife to tell her. It sounds silly, but religion has a lot to do in my life. It always has done, for instance, being a boy. I believe in God. If people don't, that's their problem. I know what suits me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. Thank you really much, Ian, for that. Mary, do you have a comment into this?
Yeah, for me, I was thinking it's like it has been so wonderful to just come to know myself, to know who I am and to know what my strengths are and to realize that some of my, greatest strengths are actually the things that I was criticized for growing up. And to be able to reframe that and go, no, I am creative. Like I am I'm strong and I'm forceful and I'm tenacious and they're real strengths,
Absolutely.
and sort of discovering academia late in life has just been brilliant. I've really, really enjoyed that. Now it's poignant because I think if I'd known that I was autistic years ago and been supported, I'd have had a very different career to what I have had. But recently getting involved in academia and research, and just bringing out that sort of creative side, it's brilliant. That's where I'm currently getting my strength at the moment.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you so much, all of you. As another piece that comes up a lot is that loneliness, right? Not just in later life, but actually for some of us throughout life. But people talk about it more later in life, not just for neurodivergent people, for all older people, it seems. So for each of you, what has helped you feel sort of more connection or belonging as opposed to lonely? Or maybe you've never felt lonely, but what has helped you feel connection or belonging? Sorry, I'm throwing all these things that you would know prep in advance because it's coming out authentically. Ian, there you are.
Well, one thing that changed me was when my wife died, I had a choice. Sit in the pub and drink all day, turn alcohol in the house and watch TV, or create something. I created me, what I used to be 10 years ago. I rode bikes till I was 60, packed in, and I took them up again. I got a motorbike, met a friend with a motorbike who was dying of cancer, John, and John said, get a bike, become what you are. I wear this for body armor.
And then
I wear colours. That means I'm associated with other bike clubs and other bikers. I've made wonderful friends and I've got a wonderful subject. But I'll create things like you take the weekend. My weekend starts this Sunday at church, afternoon, go to Wetherspoons, have a pint. Then I turn around and go and see a rock band in a local pub. And I've got to know people. Easy as that. Just say hello.
I love it. Thank you so much, Ian. That really is so true what you say. You got to look to what are the things that I enjoy and then find people who enjoy the same. I mean, and that then you find those connections, don't you? Thank you so
You
much
create
for
new
that.
connections. I'm meeting people. I've met people today who were Hells Angels, and the brotherhood thing's incredible, especially amongst bikers. It's amazing. People don't know about. Know people.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that input, Ian. That's really great. Anyone else have Nigel?
Yeah, so I was just going to say that what I noticed when I left full-time employment is that I had a really big network of people that I knew, that I relied a lot on my work for external validation and the community. I often ended up running things because the big picture thinking of a dyslexic can be really powerful in an organization. So when I left that, I realized that I needed to start again. So I deliberately went about, I think I should have got a motorbike. That would have been the thing, because I've had one when I was younger. So I'm going to put that on my list. But what I did is I started doing the creative things that I put to one side, forgot all about.
Yeah.
And also I decided to start a third career. So career as an entrepreneur, career as an academic. And so what I've done now is combine those two things. And I really do get a lot from mentoring. It's you could say it's a side hustle, but it's more than that to me, because I feel I'm supporting people. I'm building a new network, and I'm just retraining at the moment. So I'm very comfortable being a business mentor. But what I've learned from working with dyslexic entrepreneurs is the unresolved trauma that they have still to deal with. So many of them. And so I'm just finishing a coaching course looking at how to support people through that process of self-discovery. So yeah, for me, it's been about doing new things that I've never done before. But I think I'm inspired by Ian now. I think I'll go back to an old thing I used to do again as a
Fantastic.
fan.
Excellent. Cross-expiring. That's fantastic. I can't get it better than that. Thank you for sharing that, Nigel. Una.
It's just about communication in a way. What used to drive me crazy when I was a kid was that everybody did small talk, but nobody did big talk, i.e., about the things that really matter.
Yeah.
But I found that what has sustained, a half dozen really good friendships throughout my life was the capacity for big talk and to talk about things that matter. And in my job as a tour guide, being able to talk about history, being able to connect through history, was really important to me. Some people really got it, other people really didn't. But I found it really helped to bring that thing of big talk. You want to talk about something important to you, then I actually can do that vertical drop immediately into big talk if they wanted to. I was actually on a major historic site in Ireland. And I remember one time a Danish family came and they had ancestors at the Battle of the Boyne. And there was this lovely pair of parents with three little boys. The eldest would have been maybe 14, the next one was maybe 12, the next one maybe 10. And I remember looking at them thinking, watching the father explaining that there were 6,000 Danish troops at the Battle of the Boyne brought by the royal family because of their connections to the royal family. And the father was explaining very carefully that the cadets were probably about the age of the eldest boy, 14-year-old. And I remember thinking, God, imagine that kid, on a battlefield like that. It was a major kind of battle in Ireland that in all kinds of international troops were involved. But that kind of dimension and being able to relate to it and say, yeah, these are the things that people want to be recognized when they come back. Yeah, we know there were Danish troops. Yeah, here are their names of the regiments. Yeah, it was the best, witness statements about that battle come from the Danish army that were participated in it because they sent stuff every month, every hour on the hour to Copenhagen, by a rider. So they had the best news that was going on about that. So things like that, the depth dimension in talk is history and people's history and interests and really what they were. I mean, I remember one day a couple of guys came down, they were really looking for trouble. And I recognized them as being kind of interested in trouble. But I also asked them about their surnames. Oh, you've got a Danish surname, Dunlop. You've got a Scottish-Irish surname. You've got a Huguenot surname. And I printed out a record for each of them, and they went away delighted with themselves because they had been recognized. That is what history does, is recognition. I was recognized in London as belonging to a particular family of the 18th century, it was really amazing, So history, I find, really helps me. It's a special interest, but everybody's got a history and they have some history. And being able to do that kind of deep empathy and deep talk, if somebody wants to do deep talk, that's a particular thing that a lot of neurodiverse people have. They don't do this trivial bit, but they'll do the big piece, and that's interesting,
That is interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. We just had Hugh sharing on the chat. I've definitely gained the confidence to put my ADHD front and center and trying to find opportunities to change organizations I'm involved with to be more worthy of the ND communities. I'm working on a risk model for ND people and the ND community. I'm also enjoying being retired. I like this, Hugh. Particularly the bit when I wake up in the morning and realize the bastards can't fire me anymore. Yeah, well done. So, Mary or John, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, thinking about it again, it goes back to that self-knowledge for me. It's just that sense of knowing that I'm just so comfortable and content on my own. I don't tend to experience loneliness. I mean, I did, but as I look back, it was very much an imposed sort of, it wasn't really a genuine loneliness. It was an imposed sense of failure. Because the message that I'd been given was that it's not okay to be solitary. It's not okay to be alone. You're supposed to be sociable, and there's all that sort of sense of failure and shame and all that goes along with that. But later in life, realizing that I'm autistic, coming to know what that means for me, I realize I love being by myself. My favorite activities are things that I can do by myself. That's not to say I don't enjoy being with other people. I do, particularly neurodivergent people, particularly autistic people. Again, it's like as you're saying, we talk the big stuff. We don't do small talk. We do big talk. Um, but it's giving myself permission to not spend time with, non-autistic or, non-autistic people, neurotypical people, unless I really want to, which is rare. And it's just that permission to just do what I want, to walk out, say, no, I'm done, bye. It's just, yeah, I like that. I like that.
A form of racism, Mary. I don't know against neurotypicals or no.
Say that again, I missed that, sorry.
Is that a form of racism against neurotypicals? I don't know.
Oh, not at all. I mean,
Bias, bias.
No.
if you find one that interests me, happy
No,
to
I
talk
know.
to them. It's,
Except what people works for us. I love
yeah,
the whole community. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, most people in that have remained in my life are autistic or otherwise neurodivergent. And there are, I don't think there are any, sort of neurotypical people that I would have, any real significant connections with, really, beyond a couple. And it's just giving myself that permission to go, nah, no interest in this, I'm out of here.
That's right. Well done. Thank you so much for sharing that. John, did you have?
Yeah, I'm glad that Mary talked about kind of the imposition of the framework that makes you feel lonely, because honestly, I think it's hard. And I think loneliness is an inherent part to a lot of autistic adults' lives. We dedicate like a whole section in Autism for Dummies talking about this. And I remember, I think one of the sections I opened it by talking about Japanese author Osamu Dazai in his 1948 novel, A Failed Human. We can't diagnose historical figures, but he had a lot of autistic traits. He opens that novel, one of the most famous novels ever produced in Japan, by talking about one of his earliest childhood memories is of the joy that he experienced in seeing his first trains. And then his second childhood memory is right after that, where he just feels this intense sense of loneliness and disconnection. And he says, I can't even imagine what it must be like to live as a human being.
Yeah.
And I look at that, and I think it relates to what Mary said about kind of that imposition of the frame of like how we're expected to connect and socialize with other people. And certainly I think that he was looking at it and saying, well, I don't connect with the world like everybody else does. Therefore, something must be wrong about me. I think one of the things that has helped me, and it's something that I struggle with because my friend group is mostly non-autistic, but I found a friend group of non-autistic people who are willing to take the time to kind of understand me, and I can take the time to understand them. That's helped me out a lot. And I think what Mary said is going to be sticking in my brain for a while, because, I next March I turn 50, and I've been freaking out about, like, I don't know how to celebrate my birthday. I don't know what to do. And I've been thinking a lot of like, well, how much of that is actually imposed and just I'm supposed to feel like I should celebrate it in a certain way, and how much of this false expectations am I putting of myself? One thing that I have found is just like nurturing the relationships that I do have, whether it's, my friends here in San Francisco, or realizing that, not all relationships have to look the same. I just got back from Vienna, where I met up with friends who were going to Eurovision. I was in Europe for a couple of conferences. I hadn't seen those friends in 8, maybe 10 years, and they had kind of strayed to acquaintances, but just meeting up with them again, I realized, well, there's no reason why I can't nurture these friendships, even though we haven't seen each other. And and I think that might be a benefit of being neurodivergent, is realizing that, maybe not all of our relationships, particularly with non-neurodivergent people, will look the same, but it doesn't mean that we can't find meaning and value in them. Again, that's one of those lessons I wish I would have learned a lot earlier, and I still don't think I'm done learning that lesson. It's kind of what I feel at this point.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. So much is ringing bells in my mind at the same time as you were speaking. So, Ian,
Sorry, there is a word in Japanese about the sadness of all things living. It was mentioned in a famous Japanese film, but there's actually a specific word in Japanese for that. So maybe I don't know if that connects with that Japanese author, but they seem to have a sense of that, you know, the
what is
inherent
it
loneliness of being human, maybe in a
in
way.
Japanese? The word for autism means in their own world.
Yes, well, in a way, the loneliness is
Right.
connected with that for sure, you know.
Ian, you have your hand up.
Could I ask something? All these people are here on the screen here talking, and they're all nice people. You know, I think they're very nice people. Um, they're all chatting to each other. They're all chatting away, being friends to each other. It amazes me that they think they've got problems. But the other thing is I'm bipolar. They've got ADHD. What's the difference between them? I don't quite grasp it because,
Different conversation.
you know, am I thinking differently to these people or what? But they're all friendly to each other. If you listen to them all, you think they're all in the same room, same with yourself, talking away. They're all strangers. And I've been to San Francisco just last year. Lovely place. I'm at the Hells Angels there as well, by the way. But the thing is this, they're all chatting to each other and they're all stressed and they don't seem to realise they're doing it now. Well, why not just outside say hello to somebody across the road with? Have an old lady across the road. Do something kind for somebody. But either way, you're all communicating. You're all from different cultures. I don't see how it doesn't work.
Well, everybody,
Communication style is a bit different.
yeah, it is quite different, and everybody functions differently. All of us function differently from each other. Um, I feel uncomfortable to go to someone across the street to talk to someone randomly. I'm very comfortable here because it's a safe space, and we've come together for this specific purpose. So that makes me feel comfortable, and hopefully everybody feels comfortable with that. But if you go up to a complete stranger, it's there's no guarantee that it's a safe space. So I think that's the difference, especially if you've been bullied significantly through life and beaten from when you were quite young on the school bus, which I have. I'm not assuming that everyone is safe. I'm careful. For sure. So, but I hear what you're saying, Ian, and it's good input. Yeah, we are sitting here, and I'm hoping that's because we created an environment where people feel safe enough to be here and speak up for the better of everybody. So, thank you. The last one, and then we'll finish. That I'd love to hear what kind of environments or people, and we touched on this already, helps you all feel safe, calm, and or able to be yourself. So we've already talked about that, but I think
Yeah.
it can help other people to get ideas of what kind of environments and people to be around themselves. So anyone wants to have a go at that? Ian, you have already sort of talked about, I'm sure, the people you meet through your motorbikes, you meet through your church, and those are environments that makes you feel calm and safe. Yeah.
Can you hear us?
Yes, yes.
Oh, well, what it is, I literally help people and try to help them the best I can. I don't care who they are, because everybody's got problems in this world, and you don't know how deep problems are in people. They could have lost somebody, they could be in debt, they could be living on the streets. But I go out my way to be kind to people. If they don't accept us, why bother them? You're not going to drink tea with them. You're not going to the hobby. But if you can just say hello to that little old lady sitting by herself on a bench, it might change her life and save her life.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for that, Ian. Anyone else? Where do you feel safe? What is the environment or people? So you touched on it, Mary, around neurodivergent people make you feel easier to be around. I certainly feel very much when I'm with groups within Ion and we talk, what I feel is that there's no judgment, there's no specific way of being. I can be who I am. I can be not having had shower that day or not. Nobody cares, right? And I love that. I just feel that is really where I can truly be myself. And then I go into the business world, put my pearls on and whatever to try to fit in whatever I need to fit into in the boardrooms, and get pretty, tired from doing it. But I know it's necessary, and I still need to earn money for my pension, right? So, any thoughts, anyone?
Yeah, can I come in there and just say absolutely agree with you that it is, just being with other autistic and neurodivergent people is just wonderful in a way that, you just cannot replicate with non-autistic people. But I wouldn't extend that to say that that's necessarily a safe environment.
Mm.
And I say that because I recognize that some of the challenges that I have is simply in recognizing red flags, recognizing dangerous situations, recognizing dangerous people. I tend to see the best in everyone, and I tend to just assume that everybody is operating from good faith, and that is absolutely not the case. And I get hammered time and time and time again. Um, and sometimes some of the some of the worst violence is lateral violence within the autistic community. So while I absolutely love being with autistic people, I would caution about that because I think a lot of us, particularly those who would have, been involved in, abusive situations, domestic violence, that type of thing. And we know that autistic women in particular are absolutely vulnerable to that in ways, and a lot of that is because we don't necessarily see the red flags. So just that little bit of caution there. Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Autistic people are wonderful usually, but be careful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mary. Nigel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted to pick up on the theme of being with people that have the same neurodivergence. So I have learned a lot from being around successful dyslexic people. What I notice, if I were to look for two common threads, the first thing is what's really enjoyable about being with dyslexic people is that we understand each other immediately. We've all had such difficult times at school. We've all been told we were stupid, thick, lazy. So we've all been misunderstood. But what strikes me is once we start the conversations, it becomes really obvious that the difficulties that people experienced in their childhood are still holding them back today.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the things that I've enjoyed is that discussion with other dyslexic and realizing that actually we can do something about this, even by sharing the traumatic experiences that we've had, lift some of the weight, the burden, and people realize that they actually have an advantage, that dyslexia is not a disadvantage, it's not a disability. In fact, I think in many ways it's an advantage. And that makes me more empowered to work with dyslexic people to try and overcome those barriers to being really successful.
Thank you so much for that input, Nigel. That's really good input as well. Una?
Well, the advantage there is just about freedom, whether it's a fool's pardon or poetic license. There's a freedom of speech. And then if people, don't take it up, then that's up to them. But there can be a tremendous freedom just to be able to talk in a particular kind of way freely, That's a great and enjoyable thing.
Thank you so much. And John, finally, we're going a little bit over time, and then we'll wrap up after this.
Yeah, well, certainly being around other neurodivergent people, and particularly autistic people, it's like a sigh of relief where you don't have to translate yourself so often. One of the things that has helped me with neurotypical people is moving here to San Francisco after 16 years on the East Coast in Washington, D.C. And I think a lot of San Francisco culture is influenced by the Burning Man culture that a lot of San Franciscans go to, whereas people are kind of almost socially taught to interact with people in a way that you're not expecting anything, you're not working an angle. And I think so much of my difficulty with neurotypical people is just trying to figure out, well, what do they want? What are they trying to accomplish? Where I feel like, I can go up to somebody in San Francisco and just talk to them without them thinking I'm flirting with them or wanting a job. And it's allowed me kind of to exercise a little bit more of, maybe according to them, I won't get something socially right, but maybe they don't care. I say all that as a big pretext to, I found when interacting with neurotypical people, if you can find something that you share with them, whether it's a church or community group or passion, that creates this kind of wonderful environment where it becomes much more easy to translate between yourselves. I think probably my closest neurotypical friends have resulted from the fact that they think, who is this person who's suddenly showing an interest in this obscure thing that I like? So I know I've hit this a couple of times, wish I would have figured this out earlier in life, and have still not fully figured it out at this point. But
it's a lifelong learning, John. It's a lifelong learning.
Exactly.
All of us. Yeah. Thank you so much for all of you for being here and for sharing so freely. I really accept that. Everybody accepts that. People are saying thank you in the chat as well. So all of you, Nigel, Una, Ian, Mary, John, thank you so much for being part of finalizing this event in a really, really good way.
Good.
So this is now the end of the event, and I want to thank you to everyone who's been here, panelists, speakers, all the participants. Thank you so much. We will have videos that will be shared, and we will look into how we can share some of the slides. Thank you so much. Bye-bye all.
Well done, Charlotte.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sona.
Great. Good stuff.